a person that I admire and respect, and I'm grateful for the time that he spent with us on the school board. While this pandemic has been a struggle for the entire world, the last 10 months in our school district community have been grueling for all of us. The tone, tenor, and division of politics at the national level seems to have come to roost in our corner of the world. And that's a corner that many of us thought was and always would be insulated from that. Ever present in that division is that there are variable versions of untruth that can manifest. Untruth is damaging to people, to systems, and to communities. Repeating untruth over and over does not make it become truth. We must not lose sight of what is real and what is not. Many of you may have experienced that firsthand. As elected officials, you're exposed to these dynamics, and you are made vulnerable by the positions that you are in. As an appointed official, I share that experience with you. Our collective job is to lead. You lead in a representative democracy. You are not elected simply to be a mirror that reflects your community. You are elected to be a leader in your community. You are elected to make decisions. And as leaders, we all learn quickly that decisions never make everyone happy. In today's world, unhappy can quickly shift to angry. But this is a time, even with those dynamics in our world, when this community can turn a corner. This community can determine that it chooses to reflect what it values and what it loves about Vermont and what it wants for all of our kids. The truth is that we all love this place. Since I began my role with you in 2014, I've always believed in the Mill River community. I've always believed that this community has the passion, the compassion, the talent, and the grit to be what it expects and what it believes about itself. Coming out of this local crisis in the midst of a global crisis may be the ideal time to claim our place and decide what we want this community to be. What do we want to be? I can tell you, as a school district of educators, we have strived to be a place that others in the state look to in order to see how good things can be done. Despite any narratives to the contrary, we are in fact that place. Our board leadership has helped to get us there. As a community, I believe that we also can be the place that others look to see how good things can be done. To do that, we have to do our part together with respect, with love, and with truth. For everyone and from everyone. I sincerely would like to thank the board for the opportunity it's provided me to serve previously and to lead into the future in this context, where we all work together to lead with sincerity and truth. I'm grateful for that opportunity, and I'm excited about what lies ahead for all of us and the opportunities that are ahead for our district and our community on the whole. With that, I'd like to take some time to allow each of our new board members a chance to introduce themselves. And if it's okay, just based on how you're arranged on my screen, I'd like to start with Samantha Green. Samantha, welcome. Would you mind telling the board and the community who you are, where you're from, and just a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi. Like you said, I'm Samantha Green. I use she, her, but I've never minded a good they, them, theirs. I live in Shrewsbury. We lived here for about 5 years now. My wife graduated from Mill River. My little sister-in-law did too. I worked at Castleton for a while, where I got to, get my own graduate degree while I worked there in administration. I also watched my little sister-in-law become a nurse there. So that's, education's always been part and parcel with my life. And this opportunity arose and I was really excited for it. I'm still excited for it. And I can't wait to get to going. So thank you, Shrewsbury, for your vote.
Great, Sam. Great to have you and welcome. Next on my screen, I see Bruce Morton, but I know Bruce has some microphone issues. So Bruce, I'll throw it out to you if there's anything you'd like to put in the chat, whether you'd just like to read it on us to read it on our own, or if you'd like me to read anything out loud, happy to do so. So just let us know via that venue if that's okay. And then we're on to Matthew. And Matthew, I want to make sure that I say your last name properly. So can you just coach me off the bat, and welcome, and love to hear about you.
Sure. My name is Matthew Gouchberg. I do go by Matt typically. I have lived in Clarendon for about 5 years. My wife grew up here. She's a 1997 graduate of Mill River. I work here in town. I also work in Killington. And just touching on what Dave Yance was saying, I've never met John personally. Couldn't even pick him out of a lineup. But after I won the election yesterday, he was the first person outside of Facebook that actually reached out to me to congratulate me. Said a lot about his character. I felt his comments to me were sincere, and I would like the opportunity to get to know him someday. I really felt like he took everything with grace and showed a lot about his character. So thank you, John.
Matt, good to have you. Thank you for those comments on the whole, and thanks for those comments about John. I think we all appreciate that. I'd like to move on to, and I want to make sure I do names properly. I'm going to say Asha Carroll. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Perfect.
Hi, everyone. I'm Asha Carroll, and I've just been elected to represent Tinmouth here on the board. My husband, Andy, and I moved from New York City to Tinmouth 5 years ago. We moved here to build the foundation for our life together. We were married 4 years ago in our backyard right here in Tinmouth, and we moved here to build the foundation for a family someday too. So that's a big motivator for me, and has been in my desire to be here on the board. I really believe in supporting both the students present and future in our communities. So I work as a communications professional, and I'm a small business owner. And I'm a former teacher and curriculum writer myself, both in New York City and in Boston schools. Thrilled to be here. And thank you all for getting me here.
Excellent. Thank you, Asha. Thanks for the introduction. We're glad to have you join us. I did see Bruce Morton just indicated because of microphone issues, we'll hold off on his intro until next time. But Bruce, once again, good to have you with us. And finally, someone we all know, but Maria French would like to congratulate you on you were running for your incumbent seat, and congratulations on remaining with the board. I don't know if there's anything you want to say in this moment, but I just want to give you that opportunity.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Thanks for the congratulations. And thanks to Longford for re-electing me. It's an honor to serve you all and to work with this group. I really appreciate all that I've learned and all that I've been able to contribute to. So thank you. Excellent.
Thank you very much. So my next responsibility, before I have to turn over any responsibility for anything, is we need to identify a board chair, and then the board chair will lead us through the rest of our reorganization process. So I am seeking any nominations for the role of board chair. I see several hands going up, so I'm going to just call them in the order that I saw them. I saw George, then Liz, then Maria, then Matt. So George, you have a nomination?
I would like to nominate Adrian Raymond.
Okay, we have a nomination for Adrian Raymond.
I would like to second that.
And a second from
me.
Liz, thank you. Liz, did you have a separate nomination related to that?
No, that was Maria seconded that nomination.
I'm sorry. What I get for looking down while I'm trying to see what people are doing. Okay, so one nomination with a second. Liz, did you have a separate nomination? Okay. Matt, I believe you were next. Is that correct?
Yes, I was going to nominate Doug Earl.
All righty. Doug Earl. Is there a second in terms of nomination for Doug Earl? I see Len.
Okay, Len's got it. George.
And are there any other nominations for the role of chair?
Yeah, we'll get it, I'm sure.
Hey, Doug, you're unmuted, just so you know.
Wish I had known that earlier.
All righty. It's customary for me to just issue statement of importance of this role. My experience with working with the board chair, one of the key issues from the superintendent's perspective is availability and interaction. Candidly, the board chair and the personnel chair are probably two individuals that I have my most interaction with outside of actual board meetings because of the dynamics of how those roles and that work responsibility plays out. So just want to share that as my request. With that, we will need to decide the best way to go about voting. Would anyone like to make any recommendations for how we'd like to vote on these? Mr. Amber?
I would suggest a roll call.
Suggest a roll call?
Yes,
George, is that what you were going to say?
yes.
Okay, fantastic. Is everyone comfortable with me calling you in the order I see you on your screen as opposed to trying to make up an alphabetical order that may or may not be accurate? Is that okay?
Yes.
Great. And I see Bruce Morton saying yes as well. Final question to our new board members. So to Matt, Asha, Sam, and Bruce, I just need to confirm that everyone has been sworn in today prior to starting this role. I see Sam nodding her head. Asha, have you been able to be sworn in as of yet?
No.
Okay, so Asha, you won't be able to vote for this. Matt, I see a thumbs up. Bruce, did you just flash something up on chat? I may have missed that. Bruce said yes. Okay. And Maria, were you sworn in for your role? Okay, perfect. Liz, did you have a comment or question before we proceed with roll call vote?
I'm wondering, can we take a moment to get Asha sworn in?
That's not a responsibility that we can do here. That actually needs to happen through the town clerk's office is how
Gotcha. Okay.
that occurs.
Thank you.
All right. On that note, so just to let you know the order I'm calling. Oops, I see a hand raised by Adrian with a comment. Adrian, go ahead.
I was just going to say if she knew any of the BCA members in her town, she could quickly do a swear in, but it's fine.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. All right. Any other comments or questions before we proceed with a roll call vote? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to call in this order. First, I've got Doug, then BJ, then Sam. Doug, how do you vote?
Me.
Okay.
What
Thank
are
you.
we voting for? I guess I need some clarification.
We're voting for the position of chair. We have two nominees, Doug Earl and Adrian Raymond. So we're going
So
through and casting
which one
votes.
are we voting on now?
Well, because we have two nominees, you need to cast a vote for one because we can't cast one aside and say the next one automatically becomes the chair. So my interpretation would be each person needs to cast a vote for an individual. If someone sees that differently, I'm absolutely ready to listen and to take any advice on process.
That's the correct procedure.
Okay, so on that note, I've got Doug has voted and cast his vote. BJ, on to you.
Adrian.
Thank you. Sam, on to you.
Adrian.
Okay, up next, I will have Len, Maria, and George in that order. Len, up to you.
Doug?
Maria, to you.
Adrian.
George, to you.
Adrian.
All right, thank you. Next, I have Liz. Asha, we need to skip over. So I've got Liz, then Matt, then Bruce. So Liz, how do you vote?
Adrian.
Matt, how do you vote?
Doug.
Thank you, Matt. Bruce, are you able to type a vote into the chat for us? Bruce said Doug. Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. I have that noted. And finally, last board member is Adrian. Adrian, how do you vote?
Yourself.
Sorry, I should unmute. I'll vote for myself. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So with that, the votes are 6 in favor of Adrian to 4 in favor of Doug and 1 theoretical abstention with Asha. So congratulations to Adrian for being elected as chair of the Mill River Unified Union Board. And Adrian, with that, I turn leadership of this meeting over to you.
Oh, thank you. I guess we have to now nominate a vice chair and open for nominations. George?
I didn't signal.
Liz?
Yeah, I'm signaling, and this is Liz.
Oh, I'm sorry. I saw George come up on the screen, so I thought he had
No.
made the sound. Liz,
That's all
what
right.
was your nomination?
I would like to nominate Maria French to serve as vice chair.
Okay, is there a second?
Yes.
And that was Sam. Thank you.
Adrian.
Yes.
I actually, can you nominate yourself?
Can you nominate yourself? Sure.
I'm
Yes.
interested in the position.
I believe you can.
So
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. So we have BJ and Maria so far. Are there other nominations?
Adrian, just a quick question. Is your screen set up one where you can't see everyone? Do you want me to call the hands?
That would be lovely because I can't. I can only
Uh,
see the little tiny squares.
I was detecting a little bit of that.
Yeah.
So I see
And that
Matt's
was- yeah.
Matt's hand is up. Matt, what do you have?
And I don't see Matt at all.
I'll nominate Doug.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
I didn't hear that. Who did Matt nominate?
Doug. Earl.
Doug? Okay.
Yes. So are there any other nominations?
I do not see any other hands raised, Adrian.
Okay, so I guess we'll go through the same process. We have Maria, BJ, and Doug that are nominated for vice chair. And Dave will call our
Will do.
names and we can vote.
You betcha. So once again, in this order, we'll have Doug, then BJ, then Sam. Doug, for the role of vice chair, how do you vote?
Self.
Okay.
Thank you. BJ, for vice chair, how do you vote?
Self.
Sam, self is not an option, but for vice
Nope.
chair, how do you vote?
Maria.
On to Len, then Maria, then George. Len, how do you vote?
BJ?
Thank you, Len. Maria, how do you vote?
For myself.
And George.
Marie.
On to Liz, and then Matt and Bruce. Liz, how do you vote?
Maria.
Matt, how do you vote?
Doug.
And Bruce, is that Doug that I see at 7:22? That's the time, so that would be for that. Thank you very much. Yours is recorded, Bruce. And finally, Adrian, how do you vote?
Maria.
Okay, so based on that, we have 5 votes for Maria, 3 votes for Doug, 2 votes for BJ. So that places Maria in the vice chair role.
Okay, thank you, Maria. We now need to elect a clerk and open for nominations. George?
I'll nominate
Oh, sorry,
Doug.
Dave. And there's their
Adrian, would it
second?
be?
I'll
I
second
know, I'll
Doug.
let you do it.
Well, I just want to mention what the role of the board clerk is as opposed to the district clerk. I think that's an important
I think that
distinction
would be
to make.
lovely.
Yeah, so yesterday, in voting, there was the role of district clerk. Crystal Usher was elected to that position. That was wide open. There were a lot of write-ins, but Crystal had a number of votes. That is the role that manages the voting process, if you will, that oversees the vote counting and certifies the election, that type of thing. The role of the board clerk can at times be a note-taking, record-keeping type of role. Oftentimes, staff from my office manage that process, but the board clerk is kind of always on call to be the default note taker or the default signer of a few things that are require signatures, that type of approach. So just wanted people to understand the role specifically.
Okay, I'm sorry, did was there a second for Doug
Yes.
as clerk?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there other nominations?
Don't see any
I
other
guess
hands raised, Adrian?
I guess hearing none, I don't know if we have to go through the process. Doug, will you accept that position?
Yeah, I thank you for letting me participate in this tight situation. I accept.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate that. I guess now we are moving on to identifying a date and time for our, this says monthly board meetings. Obviously, we have 2. Currently, we are the first and third Wednesday at 7 p.m. Does anybody have any objection to those times? I don't know if we have to, vote on them if there are any changes necessary. People are sort of used to it, so it would be a big change.
Doug has his hand up.
Yeah, I have a question. Could we add at the end of virtual a phrase that says "if needed"? I'm hoping we're not going to be doing this for the next whole year. It'd be nice if we were able to get together as a group, like we were supposed to be the last few years.
Right. No, I understand that, and I agree. Dave, is there any reason that you know of that we couldn't vote mid-year at some point to just move to in-person meetings?
Yeah, you've got the power to change this organization anytime you want to. That's an option. But Doug's point about just, adding something to this document
Right.
works as well. If I were to make a prediction based on signals from the AOE, I would not see the meeting guidance and directives we've gotten for this year changing before this school year's over. But summer and fall, we're probably, hopefully, looking at a different context on the whole. So we could look to that changing, hopefully.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, I have no objection to putting as needed, Doug. I mean, I think that's perfectly reasonable. Does anybody have any objection to adding those words to our schedule? Thanks, Bruce. Okay. All right. We'll leave it with as needed after both virtuals. We need to identify locations for posting of our warnings. They have been town offices, schools, dumps, post offices. We need 3 in addition to the website. Does anybody see any problem with how we've been dealing with this up till now? Have anybody heard any complaints or? Okay. Hearing no objection, we'll leave as is. We have a media source, newspaper of record. This has been the Rutland Herald. Are there any suggestions or objections to continuing with the Rutland Herald?
Yeah.
For our new folks, the purpose of that is when we put out our warnings, any advertisements, et cetera, that's the media source we use as the primary.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I guess seeing nothing that people are objecting to, we will leave it at the Rutland Herald. Identify the bank. We have used People's United Bank. I see Stan is on the call. Is there any reason to change that, Stan, that you could bring up?
Oh, that wasn't me.
No.
No, I see no reason to change People's. Although there will be a name change at some point next year as they've been bought out by M&T Bank. So.
Oh. Okay. Okay. Does anyone have any comment or hearing nothing?
Is one bark a yes and 2 barks a no?
No, 1 bark is just Audie being horrible. And she hears strange things and will bark. So I apologize in advance. We need to appoint a truant officer. It has been Deputy Joe Hoffman. I don't know if, I'm assuming his contract will be continued and that he will be our resource officer.
That's a correct assumption for the time being. Yes.
Okay. I guess I will open it up if anybody has any comment or other suggestion.
Keep it as is.
Okay. Hearing nothing but approval, we will leave Joe Hoffman as our truant officer. We need to affirm Robert's Rules of Order for small boards.
Absolutely.
Do we have any? Thank you, George. Do we have any other comment on affirming Robert's rules for small boards? Hearing nothing, seeing nothing, we will go with that. Now we need to have the fun of appointing representatives to committees. You were all sent by Ann where, who had been on which committees up till now. I guess for negotiations, it has been, good heavens. Am I missing negotiations on the list?
It's on the list.
Oh, yes, it's right here. Sorry, it's right there. So we only have Raymond and Ambrose currently because our previous 2 members were John McKenna and Tammy Heffernan. Are there people interested in serving on that committee?
Adrian, I don't know if you can see me. I just wanted to share the comment. Most of our committees settle in at about 5, seems to be the nice sweet spot on size. Negotiations is one where that group has been anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5, just to give you a sense on how that works.
I mean, if it's only George and I, that's going to make it rather difficult. You can all think about it and
Adrian,
mention your.
I see Matt's hand is raised.
Okay.
I'm willing to be a part of it if necessary. I'll join.
Okay, thank you, Matt. That will at least give us 3, and if anybody would like to join in later on, that's fine. George, I'm assuming you will stay on for the moment?
For the moment.
Okay, thank you. Now we get to finance, which has been Filsco, Ambrose, and Raymond. So that also could definitely use more members. Who is interested?
If I may,
Yes, George?
for new folks, you're more than welcome to be on more than one committee. In fact, in the past, I've been on as many as 5, but it's you know, part of the job.
4x6.
Adrian, I believe I saw Doug's hand. Doug, did you raise your hand for finance?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
I'll be getting, my retirement's going to kick in the end of June, or excuse me, the end of May. So I'll have some plenty of time when it starts to go back up. So yeah, it'd be a good idea.
great. Thank you, Doug.
I'm not
Anybody
seeing
else?
any other hands. Not seeing
I
anyone
would
jumping
also
in.
like to point out that you can, you can come to any meeting that we have, and if there's an opening on the committee and you decide that you enjoy it, you can become an official member. But you can certainly attend any meeting. So right now we have, for finance, we have 4 people.
I think George has a question.
George?
Just wondering if Dave caught Bruce's email.
Yeah, thank you. Just seeing that. So two things. One, I see a note from Asha indicating that she has just been sworn in. So Asha, you're able to vote from here on out. So thank you. And then a note from Bruce. Great point. For new folks, maybe just a brief description of each committee would be in order. And Adrian, I am glad to defer to you for that, or if there's any input you'd like me to give, or maybe the previous chairs might be good at painting a picture of the various committees.
I think that would be very helpful. Liz, would you like to go through what's expected of a finance committee member?
I would actually, can everybody mute themselves, please? Thank you. We have a description of each committee, like a 1 or 2 line description of each committee. Do we know where those are? Because we spent a lot of time on that.
On the website. They're on the Mill River website.
Okay, let me track down the link and I'll put that in the
pull
chat.
that up because I don't want to misspeak.
Liz, while I'm talking about that, do you want to maybe just talk about kind of when finance is busy and when they're not? You know, there's a definite season to the finance side.
Right. So I am the new chair since, gosh, I don't even know. Adrian, do you know? July, August, September? I have no idea. But we are very busy around budget season. And then, and Stan, actually, thank you for that, Dave. I'm going to read the little description. We're very busy around budget season, and then otherwise it's pretty standard. So I am going to read our description because we spend a lot of time working on the one-liner. So the purpose of the Finance Committee is to develop a district budget with input from the administration for adoption by the full board and to meet periodically to ensure its sound oversight. So we get to work very closely with Stan Palasic, who is our business manager. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
Hello. Liz, do you have a time that you normally meet? Any of the week and time?
Yes, thank you, Doug. So we typically meet, and I'm looking at my calendar, I believe the fourth Monday of the month at 4:30. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. So we have been meeting the fourth Monday of the month at 4:30 p.m.
But I would like to add that finance sometimes meets outside of that, and also at the first meeting of every committee, those meeting times can be adjusted for the new members. So don't let that be the deciding factor in whether or not you can join a committee. So I guess we have a last call out for finance.
I'm interested in serving on the finance committee.
That's Asha, Adrian, in
Yep,
case
thank
you
you,
didn't.
Asha.
Thank
She
you.
popped up on the screen when she spoke.
And I think maybe we should also be open to just kind of going through everything, letting everybody think about where they might wish to serve, and then we can maybe circle back or allow people to follow through with an email follow-up, indicating where they'd like to serve or where they see themselves serving.
It's also, as I said, possible to just come to meetings, and if you decide that this is something you're interested in, then you can join the committee, provided it is not full, and we don't have very full committees at the moment. So as the moment, we have Philsco, Liz, Doug, Asha, and myself, and George, you're still on that, or aren't you? Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is that okay?
Yep.
George? Okay.
Yes.
Then we have personnel. Dave, would you like to read personnel, or Len, would you like to give the spiel?
I think I can speak to it. Basically,
Okay.
the job of the personnel committee is to vet new hires, provided information from David in terms of what's taken place in the interviews. One of our responsibilities is in terms of administrative pieces, but also just in terms of teaching positions. Again, the purpose of the personnel committee really is to just go over the new hires and the openings and then provide that with the board. I don't know, David, how accurate is that?
Yeah, pretty
We
accurate.
forgot one big thing. We review David.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the major roles of the board is to do an evaluation on superintendent, on the superintendent, and which we completed last year. And Maria and I are gearing up to do another one. I just told her
That means I'm on the committee.
I think, Glenn, it's worth stating the personnel committee, it is the one that probably meets most intermittently, and that doesn't mean rarely, but it can be a little bit random at times. So we usually historically have tried to link up personnel committee to evenings that there are board meetings and have that meeting occur before the board meeting. That's the general approach. But occasionally, any of you that have experience in industry or companies that employ people, there are occasionally personnel dynamics and situations to be discussed and talked through. And so sometimes we need to schedule meetings for various purposes. Sometimes we meet to talk about negotiations. Sometimes we meet to talk about hires. There's just a lot of variability, but generally it's linked up with a board meeting.
Yeah, traditionally we meet at 6 o'clock on the first Wednesday before the board meeting at 7 o'clock. We actually have a meeting scheduled at 6 o'clock on March 10th that anybody is welcome to attend. And that's, I think, David, you sent that out. I know Ann changed it. Thank you, Ann. Or somebody changed it. But so the personnel committee will be meeting March 10th at 6 o'clock. And everyone's welcome.
Okay,
Thanks,
I see
Bruce. I'd love to see you.
Interested.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would like to stay on. This is Bjorn.
Thank you.
That does make for 3 Wallingford people on it. I just want to point that out. I know that that was an issue last year with policy.
Oh, that's true.
So, and I would honestly be happy to switch to policy, but I don't know. I go to both those meetings regardless because they're interesting. If
I'd be
necessary.
happy to be on there.
I saw Matt just raise his hand, Adrian.
If you need another person, I'll be on there.
Okay, so right now we have Len, Maria, Doug, BJ, Bruce, and Matt, and that's probably as many as we can handle on a single committee.
I do see Asha's hand up. I know Maria just mentioned she might be interested in a switch, so just wanted to point that out that Asha raised her hand.
Asha, would you like to come to the meeting and see if it's something you're interested in? Maybe you guys can do that switch.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, I'll put you in for right now.
So everybody show up and we'll go from there.
Right.
Adrian, I see Sam has her hand raised as well.
Just while we're in between, I had some time to marinate, and I would like to sign up for negotiations if we can go backwards.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sam. Buildings and grounds. That committee was chaired by John McKenna. So Dave, we will let you read the description.
Ooh, I don't have the description in front of me, but I'm going to make one up and then go to Gary. So Buildings and Grounds is a committee that works directly with Gary Marcy, who's our Director of Operations, who's with us on the call. The Buildings and Grounds Committee was originally formed when we entered our merger, and we had different facilities with different histories and different financial dynamics that all came together to form one committee and make sure that we were making good decisions in that as a new entity, having come from all these unique standalone districts. I'd suggest that now it's a committee that Gary is able to use as a sounding group, a group to float ideas past, a group to keep informed. It does help to have some interest or technical knowledge in facilities type of work, not required, but it does help. And Gary, I'll defer to you for anything else you might add in terms of how that group tends to function.
Typically, we would get together the first Tuesday of every month to allow us to have a meeting just prior to the board meeting the next day on Wednesday, so that issues that come forth at the committee level can then be taken to the board the very next day. We deal with everything building, grounds, and transportation as well. The transportation department is actually within the buildings and grounds division, if you will. So yeah, we get into everything from maintenance to long-range planning for construction projects, talking about any little details that we can. So happy to have anybody.
Unmute. Hey, there you go.
Yeah, I noticed that. Thank you. So right now on Buildings and Grounds, we have George, Doug, and Maria.
Matt has his hand up.
Yeah, I can't see anything, so thank you, Lynn.
I would prefer to step off the committee, please.
Okay, I will take you off. And Bruce put something out that he would be interested. Len?
No, Matt has his hand up.
Oh, Matt. I'm sorry. It was Len talking.
Yeah, I'd like to be on that committee as well.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. So we would have now.
Not Len.
Bruce. Yeah, I know. I said Bruce and Matt. So we have Bruce, Matt, George, Doug, and no longer Maria.
That's correct, Adrian.
Okay.
It's a good situation.
They had big red marks.
Okay. Doug, you're unmuted. Now we have policy. BJ, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I'll take this one. Commonly, what we've done with policy is ran it on the first Tuesday of the month, right before buildings and ground. There's usually a good mix between the two people, so we try to keep it all in one night. We do primary focus that I think we're going to be doing on right off the bat is we're going to be reviewing all of the policies that we have. I think we started a little schedule on that one. This group, we look at what comes down from the state. We look at what's needed for the school. We usually have some discussions about a policy. Some of them are very, very quick. Some of them take months to really hash out what the actual wording is. And if you're an old Mill River person, there's a lot of this, we call it snarky. John was our newer one, but so especially if you are good with grammar and like that stuff, that's something that does help too in wordsmithing. So yeah, that's policy.
Adrian, I see Ash's hand, and I see Bruce. I know that BJ got Bruce as soon as he said if you're interested in grammar. So Bruce says, okay, grammar. I'm in as well. I see Len and Maria.
It's Ruth.
Okay, so Liz, are you still interested in being on policy?
I was actually just going to jump in and say if there are people, if there are people interested in coming on, I am happy to come off and look to see where I can be utilized.
Okay, so I will take you off that. So we have Asha, Bruce, BJ, Len, and Maria. And I would like to say that usually the chair is sort of it's not, they're just automatically on every committee. Whether they go to every committee is another thing, but that's how that works. Is anyone else interested in policy?
I don't see any other hands, Adrian.
Cool. How about community engagement? Maria, would you like to take that?
I would love to take that. Thanks, Adrian. So on the one sentence is that the purpose of the Mill River Community Engagement Committee is to increase school board visibility and access and build board engagement capacity and skills with the intention of informing district vision and goals. And that's a big mouthful, but it's about supporting the board to engage with the community. So like the community conversations that we just had, that's part of it. And if the board needs, if there's some issue that's come up and the board needs like supporting materials to help them have conversations with community members about it, we'll help work on those. Or if someone needs sort of pointers on how to cope with a situation or whatever, we're here for support and for strategizing how we can better take advantage of engagement with the community to make the district a better place. And I'm in. I want to be back on it. I love engagement.
Thank you.
So Maria, I see Sam's hand and Asha's hand.
Okay. Were both of your hands up because you wanted to join?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So now we have Maria, Liz, Sam, and Asha. Is anyone else interested in that committee?
I don't see any other hands, Adrian.
Okay, on this, it says that's all the committees. Thank you, people. And there it says authorize the chair to sign warrants in an emergency. Is that something that we need to vote on?
Yes, that is something we should vote on just so that that's officially on the record.
Could somebody make a motion for authorizing the chair to sign warrants in an emergency?
I will.
Thank you, George. Is there a second?
I'll second, Bjorn.
Is there any discussion? I mean, this doesn't usually come up unless it maybe during vacation when we haven't had a meeting, or if something needs to be signed, as it says, in an emergency, where a check has to go out and the warrant has to be signed. That's the kind of situation where that kicks in. Is there any comment? Okay, otherwise I will call the question. Can we see hands for ayes?
Adrian, are you able to see, or are you working off of?
No, I can't see anything. I don't even have pictures for most people.
I see everyone's hand except Ash's. Oh, there we go. You're unanimous, Adrian.
Okay, and Bruce was good too.
Yeah, and Bruce with an eye. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I see on the we have reviewing payroll and pay orders. George and Doug, are you two still interested in performing that function?
For the moment.
Thank you, George.
And Doug says thumbs up.
For eternity.
For eternity. Thank you, Doug. That's quite a promise. Okay. And then we have the board representative to Stafford. Is anyone interested in taking that away from me? Although I tell you, you probably have to also be the program committee chair because I just said I would do that. Any interest? Okay. I hear no objection. I will continue. How about the board rep to the VSBA? That's not really, do we have, Dave? I thought that was elected at the regional meetings.
Yes, I believe that's correct, actually, because
Okay.
that's connected to voting to represent us at the regional
Right.
meetings.
I mean, basically anyone, oh, okay, I see. So that's the person that goes to the regional meeting? Okay. I guess I will be happy to continue on that unless somebody else would like to take on that task.
It's historically it's been the chair or the vice chair or someone who's connected to the VSBA's work.
Right. I guess
You go.
I've just been lucky that way somehow. Okay. I guess I will continue in that role. They will be happy, I guess, maybe. Are we done, Dave?
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Could we get a printout like Ann did graciously today of the committees and stuff and who has spoken up to volunteer, just so that if there's an abundance in one way, you know, to give us some flexibility to put ourselves in a position to help whatever way we can.
Yeah, you bet, Len. We'll get that prep tomorrow and sent out. Just so you know, I just wrote down names as we went through. We've got 4 or 5 people for every group, so we've got a nice initial balance. But we'll get that sent out to you tomorrow.
Thank you. I kept it too, a list, so.
Hello.
Adrian, I
Yes,
see Doug.
Yeah, question. We have a small committee that's just made out of 4 people. The executive committee, I know John was representing Clarendon with him being gone. Are we still having that at times?
No, actually, John wasn't representing Clarendon. I was. And Tammy was representing, as the board chair, was representing Wallingford. And then we also had a representative from Timoth, and Adrian, I think you were the representative from Shrewsbury. And I'm assuming that Grant was a representative from Timoth. But we haven't met, so in quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
I don't know. The committee had been sort of formed to provide advice to the superintendent. And I'm not sure, Dave, would you like to see that continue? I mean, George?
Yes, one of the factors that went into the establishment of that committee was shortly after the reorganization, it was decided that it might be an additional support to help get us launched on our new format.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to your question, Adrian, my suggestion would be in this moment, I don't feel like it's necessary to create that structure, but again, we have the ability to adapt as we go. So if we found that there was a scenario where that was appropriate, we certainly could go down that road. But I'm comfortable without having that additional burden on the group for now.
Are we all okay with that? I can't see you, so if you have a comment, please raise your hand.
I see heads nodding and thumbs up, Adrian.
Okay, thank you. I guess I have to get a bigger screen. Maybe I'll be able to see people too. I'm on my iPad and it's just a little tiny row of mostly just initials, which is not very helpful. Okay, so we have gone through the board reorganization. We need to approve the agenda. Do I have a motion to do that?
So moved. This is Liz.
Thank you, Liz.
And I'll
Second.
second it, Bjorn.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
I believe I
Okay.
see all affirmatives, Adrian.
Okay, thank you very much.
You may want to call for a voice no if there are any no's. Just want to throw that out.
I was going to do that next.
Awesome.
Is anyone objecting or voting nay or abstaining? Nope. Okay. So I guess we will put that down as unanimous. Then we have an approval of minutes from 2/3/21.
So moved.
Thank you, George. Second?
I second. This is Liz.
Okay. Are there any corrections or discussion of the minutes?
I have a discussion point just to new board members. This was really confusing to me. My first board meeting of like, I wasn't at that meeting. Should I vote for it?
Thank you,
And
Maria.
you are welcome to abstain if you were not part of that meeting.
And I think legally you are actually allowed to vote yes.
Right.
If you choose to.
Right.
But feel comfortable abstaining if you don't want to vote yes or no. I think that's the point. Any other comments? Okay, I will call the question then. All in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
I see thumbs up, except from the folks who may abstain.
Okay, do we have any opposed? Do we have abstentions?
Matt has his hand raised for an abstention, and I'm not sure on Bruce. Bruce said aye, so thank
Yes,
you. We're
he
all
did.
set on that.
Okay. And then we have, let's see, minutes for 2/25/21. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion. This is Liz.
Thank you, Liz. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Bjorn.
Thank you. Any discussion or corrections to be added to the minutes? Hearing none, I will call the question. Who is all in favor? Please say aye or raise your hand. Thank you, Bruce. We good, Dave?
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. All thumbs up with Bruce is a yes, and I see Matt
Yep.
is probably going to abstain.
Okay, do we have any objections? Hearing none, abstentions?
And we've got Matt on abstention.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Then we have moved on from minutes to public input and announcements. I don't know if there's any public in attendance.
Yes, we have Gail Gillum with us by video. She's our only public commenter that I'm aware of for tonight.
Okay, Gail, I assume you have read the guidelines for public comment on the agenda, and we will hear your comments. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Okay. I wanted to congratulate all the new board members. And thank you for standing up and wanting to do this seemingly endless job. I heard mention earlier in the meeting tonight, sorry, I'm a little nervous, that about Officer Hoffman being there as maybe for a shorter period of time. I hope that's not the case. Our school needs the school resource officer. And I think Maria used the word Maria used the word strategize. And I'm hoping that we can get our school back up to single digits instead of in the bottom of the pile at number 43. And also, one word about engagement committee. I've been to a couple of them and I appreciate them, but I don't find them any different than this meeting, that you guys can't interact with us. It's just like a one-way street. And to me, that's not the definition of the word engagement. So something to think about. And finally, just for the record, I guess this is what I'm so nervous about. is to put in the minutes tonight for the actions of our new school board chair prior to the election day. I know that you all received several emails today, and I think that that's something that needs to discuss, and I'm speaking it out tonight publicly. So it's in the meeting, it's in the minutes of the meeting. And I thank you for listening, and that's it.
Adrian, before Gail departs, can I just respond to one piece that she shared? And you're muted, by the way, Adrian.
This is going to get old really fast. Thank you, Gail, for your comments. And I was going to ask Dave to perhaps respond to the comment about our place in what has been publicized, school digger, and what the meaning of that is.
Sure,
I appreciate
sure.
it. Thank you.
Yeah, and happy to do that. But actually, first, Gail, if it's okay, I just want to respond. My comment
Sure.
earlier regarding Deputy Hoffman was in no way indicative of any sort of signaling or anticipation of that role not being there. That was just
Okay.
language in the moment. So
Glad
please,
to hear that.
for you and for Deputy Hoffman, I would appreciate nobody being concerned about that.
Okay.
That language signaling anything.
Thank you.
Regarding the questions about rankings and the like, as we know, leading up to the election, there was some feedback in the community around rankings of our schools and where our schools stood a decade ago as opposed to now. And, I would encourage anyone who's doing that research to be as thorough as possible and dig into what those rankings tend to be all about. What we tend to find is there are all kinds of sites and organizations out there that choose to rank public organizations, not just schools, but anything you could imagine. Some of those rankings are based on people's opinions. Some of those are based on empirical data. Some sites use data that's readily available from the federal government or from the state government. And sometimes that's linked to various types of testing data that are publicly able to be shared. And sometimes testing data is not publicly able to be shared. What we tend to find is that rankings take combinations of test scores, although they don't account for the fact that the testing measures have changed over time and the standards against which students are tested have changed over time, especially in the last decade. They take into account poverty levels, which is a significant issue, not just in Vermont, but for us locally. And they take into account things like diversity levels and how that impacts student population, et cetera. So my encouragement to anyone would be take all online rankings with a grain of salt, whether that's a ranking that says a school or district is terrible, or that's a ranking that says a school or district is amazing. I would say that for our district, you can find both online. Talking about the same place, you can find variable assessments of what performance looks like. I'd also suggest that if people are interested in some of our data that we are required to report on, we do have data reports that are posted on our website. You can actually find those on the front page, so you can see a little bit of the history of what we have to report to the community. For the board, especially for our new board members, it's important for you to know that our board has 6 strategic goals. One of those goals is linked to student achievement, and for that we utilize internal assessments that we implement or assess students with throughout the course of the school year. And there are 2 times per year that I report out to the board on that data and how that data is progressing. So you can and should, as a board, have high expectations for the information we'll get to you in our monthly reports, our every 6-month updates on our goals and the requirements that we're supposed to fulfill, just as a result of state expectations and federal expectations. Final piece I'd like you to know on assessments and assessment data is COVID has wreaked havoc with all of that. So for example, all of the assessments that we would have done last spring under normal circumstances did not occur. So there is a large gap in the data across the country, not just in Vermont or in our little corner of the world. But there's some interesting dynamics to be navigated overall. Brian Hill, as you know, is an expert in this realm. Andrew Jones, our curriculum director, is an expert in this realm. Anytime any of you have questions, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to get the answer you're looking for or find ourselves pointed in the right direction to find it. Thanks, Adrian. still muted, Adrian, just so you know.
Thank you. That would help. No other public comments?
Not that I'm aware of. No, that's it.
Okay. So we will move on to committee reports, the first one being negotiations, and I have nothing to report. So, personnel.
Yeah, as I said earlier, our next meeting is scheduled for March 10th at 6 p.m. and that link should be up.
Okay, thank you very much. Policy?
Okay, I would actually have a motion to make. I would like to make a motion to approve the elementary program enrollment policy for a first reading.
And you are making that motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very
I'll
much.
second it.
Thank you. That was my next question. Is there discussion on this topic?
Yeah, Len will.
Okay, hi Len, go ahead. Oh, Len, were you seconding it or having discussion?
Yeah, no, second it.
Oh, thank
I
you.
think,
Okay.
isn't that what I said? Maybe I'm confused. I thought
I'm
I
sorry.
said I'll second it.
Yes. I was actually looking for my little cheat sheet and I probably lost track. Is there any discussion on the policy? Because I don't know if everyone has read it. I hope so. This was something that came out, I don't know, BJ, would you like to speak to this? And I'm calling on the previous chairs of the committees to take care of this activity, and BJ is was our past chair.
Yeah, I probably should have gone into a little bit more with it. Yeah, so the elementary program enrollment policy was created to really help clear up how we enroll, especially now that we have preschool in our school systems. So a big date that we have to put out there is I think May 15th is one of the registration days. And especially for our preschool, that helps us determine priority of who gets in or who's able to enroll, because we do have limits at the preschool level. At the someone explain number 4-year-olds. Okay, actually, David, do you want to go talk about this a little bit more?
Yes, I'd be happy to. BJ, I just need to get the draft policy in front of me because it's in a different spot. So please bear with me for a second.
My internet's kind of wacky, so.
And Dave, you have a request to explain number 4.
Yeah, yep, you got it. Yes, so good to go here. Essentially, Bruce, to your question, the answer would be, it depends. It depends on how full the particular class is. So like if we just imagine a 4-year-old classroom, you know, the students who were in the 3-year-old group the year before, we have to populate that class, and we've got to do that based on some logical timelines. So the first timeline, the first checkpoint is that that May 15th decision point, at which point we take the existing 3-year-olds and roll them up. We see how many openings we actually have available. We place first with a focus on students that are from the local town. Then we would look at students from other district schools who have interest. And then we would look at allowing people from outside the district on Act 166. There is a scenario with pre-K that has limits on enrollment based on the size of the physical space and the supervision regulations that are required. There is the possibility that a class could be capped out, let's say by June 1st. I'm just making up an arbitrary number. In which case, if a 4-year-old moves into the community, we don't have a space in that classroom for them. So our next commitment to them is we put them on a wait list, number one, but we also say, hey, we've got spots available at this school, or at this school, in case you're interested in that. After a lot of discussion, you know, we need to approach it fairly, and we need to approach it with strategy. And what we can't do is we can't tell a student that we've allowed to enroll, oh, sorry, someone else moved into town, you're now kicked out of your space that we told you had. So this is an effort to just kind of codify that to an extent so that it's predictable and we're able to plan for it. I hope that answers that question.
It doesn't. And Dave, I also wanted to mention that, you know, preschool is different than our regular classrooms. Preschool is an extra, and the limitations on size are not just what we would consider to be a classroom number that is adequate for the teacher that's there. It's actually spelled out very strictly by the number of kids for each teacher, as well as the square footage of any classroom. So we don't have the capacity to expand the numbers the way we would. You know, you might have a little bit of flux in whether or not you could add another child to a first grade class or a fifth grade class, but you cannot do that to the finite numbers in a preschool class.
That's correct. Another layer of that too is the regulations around preschool are very strict. The restroom spaces have to have certain characteristics and certain sizes. Light switches and outlets have to be certain dimensions away from the floor. You know, there are all kinds of things that apply in pre-K where you couldn't just say, oh, we've got more kids, let's throw them in this classroom over here. It doesn't work that way because of the regulatory dynamics. If it was a first grade classroom, we've got a little bit more of that flexibility. We could say, oh, we've got more students, let's use this available space. So thanks for bringing that up, Adrian.
Yeah, it does limit our flexibility quite a bit. Any other comments or things that people want to discuss? Okay, otherwise I will call the question, and this is for the first reading of this policy, correct, BJ?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand.
Adrian, I see all hands, and Bruce is abstaining when the time comes for that.
Okay. I'm sorry, I was hearing feedback. All opposed?
No signs for opposed.
Okay, abstentions? Is Bruce the only one?
Looks like just Bruce, yes.
Okay, so Bruce is abstained. Okay, BJ, anything else from policy?
Yeah, I'm wondering, I know we have some new members. Traditionally, our next meeting would be next month. However, I'm wondering if we should have one a little bit earlier, just to kind of do, introduce everybody, elect a chair, and go from that. So I'm going to make a recommendation of Tuesday the 16th at 5 for a policy meeting. If the people who volunteered for that member would be interested in that.
I will not be available at 5 on Tuesday.
Yeah, do you want to shoot for the 10th since personnel's meeting at 6 and maybe meet at 5? I just throw that out there.
I'm willing to do that too. So, so 5 o'clock meeting on the 10th. Does that sound any better? I can't see everybody because my internet's acting up, but so David, if you moderate.
BJ, this is Liz. So I'm waiting to see who is on what committee. I'm not available on the 10th, but is that the committee I offered to bow out of? No, was it community? No, I don't remember. I think it was policy, right?
Liz, I don't have you on the list that I wrote down for policy.
Okay, I think that's the one I offered to bow out of. So never mind, this doesn't apply to me. Thanks.
The policy committee currently is Asha, Bruce, BJ, Len, and Maria.
Yeah, I see Bruce can do the 10th.
And I may need to step down. I didn't realize that it was 5 o'clock on Tuesdays, and that's a problem for me. I'm sorry.
Maria, what if you really want to do it, or do you want to make a?
The 10th is a Wednesday, right?
The 10th is the Wednesday that you suggested.
Oh, it's a Wednesday? Oh, I'm good to go. Sorry. Thanks, Len. That was helpful.
I'm going to go. Well, we'll talk about it at the meeting, but I'm going to try and get paired up again on. We'll have to talk about it on the 10th, what day we want.
Okay.
But I figured we should.
Yeah, and I'm planning to do the same with personnel. If we can just do 2 the same day, you know,
Okay.
one at 5 and one at 6, then let's do it, and then we can go from there.
Okay, so Asha, are you available by any chance? I know you're one of the newer members there.
Yes, thank you, Bjorn. Wednesday, March 10th at 5 p.m. works well for me.
Okay.
Thanks.
And I see Bruce says he's available on the 10th as well, BJ.
Okay, so if we can get that on the calendar, we'll make that happen as one of those for this month.
Can do. Adrian, can I just really quickly talk about the first reading and how we process that for our new board members?
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, so you just voted on the first reading of that elementary program enrollment policy. So just so you know how that works for our new folks, now we have to warn that publicly. So we put an ad in the Rutland Herald. It has to run at least 10 days prior to the board meeting at which it will be voted on. So our next board meeting is the Wednesday the 17th, St. Patrick's Day. So by the 7th, at least, we have to have the ad in the paper that says we plan on voting on this policy. It doesn't have the entire policy, listed out in the paper because that would take up a lot of space, but it does reference it by name and invites people to check out the meeting if they're interested or contact the district if they're interested. So just want you to be aware of that process. We develop it in committee. The committee brings it here for a first reading. When the board approves that, then we warn it, and then we'll ask you again on the 17th to officially adopt that policy, just as a matter of process.
Thank you. Anything else, BJ? Or Bjorn?
Yeah, no, I think I'm good. And
Which
either
would
name
you
works.
rather?
It doesn't matter.
Oh, good, because I'm used to saying BJ, so that's good. Okay, now we come to buildings and grounds, and I'm not really sure how we get a report on that since John is not there. Is there anyone who went to the last buildings and grounds meeting that would like to report out? Or
Adrian,
perhaps
if no one
Gary?
else is willing to, I can speak
Yeah, I
quickly to it.
was just going to ask.
Yeah,
Thank you, Gary.
actually, we should have had a meeting yesterday, but because of town voting, we did not. The meeting prior to that, actually, there was not a quorum present. So we really were unable to have that meeting. So it's been a while since we have had a meeting. There really isn't anything pressing or urgent to discuss at the moment, which would then put our next upcoming meeting into April 6th would be the date for that.
And what time were they running, Gary?
We usually start those at 6.
Okay. The people that are on, thank you very much. The people that are on buildings and grounds are Bruce, Doug, Matt, and George. Is the 6th of April at 6 p.m. satisfactory? And you guys will have to elect a new chair. Dave, can you see any response?
Sorry, I was writing. I see Doug's thumb up. I see Matt's thumb up. Anybody else I'm looking for?
Matt, you got Bruce.
Oh, Bruce.
George.
I see Bruce. The 6th is fine for Bruce. So yeah, Gary, looks like you're good to go.
Okay. All right. So we will count on a committee report from Buildings and Grounds in April. Now we have community engagement. Maria, would you like to answer to that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. First, I'd just like to respond to Gail's comment, which was a good point. I think it's not always clear what the Community Engagement Committee is for, and I sort of said it before, but it's about supporting the board and figuring out ways for there to be community engagement. It's not specifically the group that like public comment in that group we take into account, but it's more dry. It's more like a board meeting where we take the comment, but we have an agenda and we don't really have time to respond to that right away. In general, sometimes we can. But that helps guide us and think about what we do need to talk about as a board and what we maybe misperceptions that need to get cleared up or issues that we haven't realized are issues that we need to talk to people about. So that's the difference. The engagement committee isn't actually doing the engagement. We're supporting the board for engagement. So with that, I want to report back on what we talked about in the last community conversation as promised. the last one was on February 22nd, and we had questions about the equity work that the board has been doing, about the budget, and about the preschool. And the preschool questions were actually pretty well covered when we just talked about that policy. So I'm not going to go into that right now. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at our minutes from it. I'm not looking at the screen. That's why I look distracted. But and we got some great suggestions on how to run more community conversations. My goal is for us to continue that on a monthly basis. We had more of them running up to the election because it seemed like a good idea to answer questions about the budget and have opportunities for people to learn more about what the board does, especially for candidates, because we had so many seats open. So about the budget question was talking about the pay increase for staff and where that comes from, and that's something that we actually don't. We include that into the budget, but we don't know exactly what it's going to be until the negotiations committee is finished negotiating the contract. So that's the easy answer to that one. The preschool questions have been answered. Equity, we heard a lot about it a few months ago, like back in the summer, but there hasn't been a lot of talk, and people were wondering how students are benefiting from the work that we've been doing. And for the moment right now, we've been having trainings for the board, for the administration, and for the staff, and providing the educators and administrators with the tools that they need to better support students. So that's where we're at with that right now. There is a 3-year equity plan that I believe is available on the website. Am I right saying that?
That's correct, Maria. Yes.
All right. So if you're more curious about that, please find it on the website. And great suggestions for continuing the conversation are to ideally have them in person. I mean, hopefully by next year we can start doing that, but right now we still have to do it online. But also some people said it was helpful to have a theme that we could, so that they knew what they were getting into when they came. Some people did still feel like it was good to be able to bring up anything. I think a theme is helpful. We'll talk about it more at the next meeting. And also to share the questions, and also to record it, so that, because these are questions that if one person has them, a bunch of people have them. So I can't say how we're going to decide. This is a committee decision, but we'll talk about it at the next meeting, which I would like to propose will be on, sorry, let me get to my calendar. March 9th at 6:30 p.m. Does that work for the majority of the equity committee, community engagement committee? Anyone? Does that not work for anybody? That's the most important.
That's Maria, Liz, Sam, and Asha.
Yes.
What time was that, Maria?
6:30 p.m. And everybody is welcome to come to that and invited. 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday the 9th. Going once.
Sounds like you're it.
All right, we're on.
Okay.
See you there.
Thank you. And finance is last. Liz, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, certainly. And I have to apologize because now that it's my turn to speak, I have 2 dogs that are wrestling under my chair. So I beg your pardon. Anyway, good evening, everyone. I want to welcome the new board members. I look forward to meeting you all, hopefully in person at some time soon. This evening, we have pay orders and payroll for approval. For pay orders, from the general fund, I have a pay order in the amount of $230,272.03. Also from the general fund, a pay order in the amount of $19,521.30. From ASP, that's after school program, $541.17. And finally, from our food program, I have a pay order in the amount of $3,821.69. For payroll, I have dated, and could I ask, if you're not muted, please mute yourself. Thank you. There's terrible feedback. For payroll, I have dated February 26th regular payroll in the amount of $542,205.58, and dated March 1st, payroll in the amount of $6,020.52. And I beg your pardon because I'm dealing with dogs wrestling. I want to go back and just say that the pay orders total $254,156.19, and the grand total for regular payroll is $548,226.10. I would like to thank George, who had a look at all of the registers and approves them, and I had a look at them as well. And I would like to make the motion to the board that we approve these pay orders and this payroll as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, George. Is there any discussion? Not hearing any discussion. I will call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Adrian, I see all ayes as far as I can tell.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much, Liz.
And I'll just add
Oh, go ahead.
before we move on, the next meeting of the Finance Committee is Monday, the 22nd at 4:30 p.m. And I regret that I personally can't meet before that because I build my entire schedule around school board meetings. And so I beg your pardon, anyone who wishes to join the committee is welcome. March 22nd, Monday at 4:30 p.m.
Thank you. Now that I'm back unmuted. We are at the part of the meeting that is transacting other legal business. Do we have any other legal business to transact?
I do.
George.
Yep, surprise.
I was not surprised.
Anyways, hang on. The past couple of days, I've had a vigorous debate with myself, and I'm not sure how it came out in terms of win or loss, but the result was I've created a letter here that I wish to read to the board. So, dear fellow board members, I would like to inform you of my formal resignation from my position as a Mill River Unified Union School Board member. I understand that my term of office will not conclude until next town meeting day, but I have been unable to fulfill my duties as a board member for several weeks and feel compelled to resign. At 80 years of age, I find that my drive and energy level are not sufficient for me to keep up with my current obligations. In addition, my wife and I find ourselves in the position of having to provide care and oversight for extended family members with significant health issues. Without reservation, I would like to state that since the reorganization of our school district, I have never worked with a finer group of people dedicated to ensure the best possible education for the youth in our area. We have worked together with civility and mutual respect for each other, and I believe we have accomplished significant educational goals for our students. Now, new members, do not be afraid to reach out to the old hands for help and advice. I would like my final day to be Friday, 3/12/2021. Please accept my apologies for the short notice and any inconvenience that may arise because of my action. I wish you individually and collectively the best of luck going forward with governing the Mill River District. Sincerely, George Ambrose.
God bless you.
George, I don't know what to say. We will miss you completely. I think you got. Do we have to accept your resignation? I suppose. I
think he's going to have to mail in his quips, though.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Okay. I'll read them. I'll for it.
Just for BJ, if you've got an extra minute, I remember a story about a father trying to teach his young daughter a lesson in finance. So at the age of about 7, he gave her $25, and they decided on how much she was going to put in the bank and how much she could spend. So the next day they went to the bank and sat down with the bank manager to open up an account. And they were filling out the application, and the little girl was providing the answers of her name, address, telephone number, and all that. And then they got to the question of, what was the name of your last bank? The little girl looked up with a bright smile and said, Piggy.
George, we will miss you so much. I personally will miss you intensely. We have been working together for so long. I'm very regretful that you are in this position to have to resign.
Thank
really
you,
am.
George, from Lenny. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. You've been a mentor to me, and I appreciate that. So thank you.
George, you
Well,
have been, go ahead, sorry.
Lenny, you and I have had many vigorous discussions, but we've all ended up respecting each other. I appreciate it.
Dave,
George, I just want to say that you've been so kind, so pleasant, and really a patient and generous mentor to all of us. So thank you. I'm sure this was a very difficult decision. So I applaud you for your courage. And I will miss you.
Thank you.
Adrian, could I share two thoughts? One,
you may.
thank you. George Ambrose is a man of integrity. We all know that. We'll miss you. So there's that. Second, because I know that the board is going to ask me, because you should, you're going to ask me, so now what? So how does this work when someone resigns in the midst of a term? So essentially, I think I heard George say March 12th is your final day. Is that correct, George?
Yes.
So the way the statute is written for a unified union school district like us is that the board essentially will need to solicit and ask, are there interested people from Clarendon that would be interested in that spot that George occupies. The board can also recommend individuals that might be worth considering. The board has an obligation to consult, and that word is very clear in the statute, has an obligation to consult with the Clarendon Select Board to get their thoughts and opinions and just give them some voice in the process. But ultimately the board collectively, and that doesn't, that means the board collectively. So it's not just folks from Clarendon or any other town, but all 11 folks, 10 minus George. The board appoints a person to complete the remainder of George's term. So whomever the board would decide that the board wanted to appoint to that role would finish up. You said one more year on your current term. Is that right, George?
That's correct.
So would finish up until next town meeting day when that position will be up as is normally scheduled. So my recommendation, just as I'm thinking on my feet, would be once we get to the 12th, then the board probably at its next meeting, which would be the 17th, could solicit, publicly, like, hey, if you have interest, please contact us in this way. And then you can formulate a list. You can also generate your own list. We can schedule a time for whomever to connect with the select board. That could be all of you, or that could be a handful. That could be just the Clarendon contingency. That could be the chair, vice chair, and a few folks, whatever that might be. But we can work out the process to land at a specific spot.
Thank you, Dave. George, do we have to accept his resignation?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Unless you refuse to, and then that's a whole other option.
George, would you like to make that motion?
Certainly. Why not?
Okay. A second? As unfortunate as
I'll
it is.
give a
regretfully a second.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion? No. I'll call the question. All in favor, regretfully, very regretfully, please raise your hand.
I can still vote.
You can still vote, George.
I'm sorry, Adrian. That's all unanimous. My apologies.
Okay, thank you very much. George, I have nothing else to say. I will miss you very much. Agenda building, if there's no other legal business.
A couple of things.
Yep.
If I might, I'm sorry. Two things. I wanted to let the new board members know that Maria and Tammy spent some time putting together a board handbook that is available to them. Go ahead, Maria.
Oh, I emailed all the new board members today, and I will be getting that to them in the next the next couple days are really busy for me. I'll try to get it to you soon. And also that it definitely needs work. So I thought maybe we could get together and talk about what we could, if there are any holes or more questions that they have. How does that sound?
That's fine. Secondly, it would be nice, and I say this whimsically, it would be nice if we had a board orientation in person. And if, I don't know, do we have to have it in the gym with us at Mill River or some other building where we're 20 feet apart or whatever? I just think, to me, and this is just me, I miss so much the in-person stuff, to be able to see people and look them in the eye and speak to them. This Zoom stuff stinks. And that, again, that's my opinion. I guess I'm old fashioned, but so I throw that out there as an opportunity. Can we at some point think about a board orientation for all of us in person? Number two, my last thing is I really think, and this is more agenda building, I really think we need to, and I think I brought it up before, we need to take the time to look at our goals as a district, specifically with new folks coming in, and re-examine those goals and make sure, number one, are we progressing towards them, or do we want to change them and update them? And I understand COVID is a whole different thing, but I think we need to look at those goals and take the time. And I think it'll be a great learning opportunity for the new folks to see what our goals are as a board and where we're trying to get to. Sorry, I'm talking with my hand. But so those are my three things, and I'll be quiet.
I would just like to second what
Yes.
Len said. I think it is best practice that we do an ongoing evaluation of what our goals are, where we are in progressing towards that goals, how we are reaching those goals, and do we need to make modifications? So thank you for that, Len.
Okay, in answer to the get together, I agree, Len. I don't think it's going to happen yet. Maybe in summer when we can be outside. I don't think we can have a bonfire big enough to be able to have everybody spread around.
Well, we did a We Will Rock You down at our rock in my backyard. So I mean, what the heck?
It's a little cold right now. I get it. But we will talk about it, I think, probably at every meeting, and it will become appropriate at some point. I totally agree that it's nice to meet people on a personal level. Maybe we can go to our camp. Who knows? You know.
Well, and the other thing I'd offer to the new folks, if anybody has any questions, contact me. Don't hesitate. And I'm sure all the board members feel the same way. Don't hesitate to contact us. We're all in this together. And I can remember when I came on board, it was a very weird situation, but you know, we're here to help. And so use us to do that.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else want to have anything for agenda building?
Yeah, there will probably be a policy that we'll be approving.
Yes, thank you, BJ.
Yeah, and as part of the orientation and whatever else, that conversation, I wouldn't mind a refresher on Robert Rules of Regulations as one of our trainings.
Thank you. I can resend you that nice little synopsis that Tammy did for us. too, if that would be helpful.
And I can make the orientation book of a document available to everybody because it also has that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Anyone else? So Dave, I guess at some point, I don't know if you can, if we can have that discussion of goals at the next meeting, but perhaps next month. Or I don't know when it fits in easily. I don't know what the next agenda looks like. I am out of that loop.
Yeah, so Adrian, my quick response to that, and please bear with me because I'm trying to look at a calendar. So we did our latest goals update, I want to say it was in mid or late November, scheduled to occur in October, November, and our next one would be scheduled to occur in April. Amazingly, that's next month. I was just looking, you know, we have our to our new folks, I'll make sure that I get you up to speed on calendar stuff here, but we have our next board training program, our equity training program, that's March 30th. Again, I'll get that to you via email so you don't have to write anything down. But we also have another board PD session scheduled somewhere in the next 6 to 7 weeks. So that might be a really good time slot in the context of board professional development to do that goal review and discussion and, you know, kind of work through a process to think about decision making there. So we'll figure it out. Just give me a little time to figure out the path.
Yeah, if we could work that into the April timeframe, that would be wonderful. Thank you. It looks like we have executive session on the agenda. I don't know if one is necessary.
We don't have a need for executive session. I wonder if, since we have a new board, if it would be worth talking just about that concept in general, just to kind of lay
I think that would be very welcome. Thank you.
Adrian, did you want me to do that, or did you want to
Yes,
take the lead
no,
on
I
that?
think
What's your
I
preference?
think that's very nice if you would do that. You have a good handle on it.
Thanks. So to our new board members, you know, I'll admit, when I was a principal and didn't really engage in as much board level work, I always wondered what the heck executive session was. Like, why do they do that and what goes on in executive session? In really simple terms, there are times, and I'll share, I've got a list of the eligible criteria that I'll share on my screen in just a moment, but there are times when the board needs to go into confidential conversation to talk about various matters. That's made more complicated in the Zoom world, right? Because we all know who we see, but you never know who's kind of within, you know, within earshot of what's going on. So one obligation that we all have is when we're in executive session that, you know, we maintain the strictest confidentiality. There are legal dynamics to that confidentiality that we have to protect in my role and in your roles. I'm going to share a tab on my computer really quickly, just so you can see what the list of eligible executive session purposes are. Can somebody give me a thumbs up, just letting me know if you can see my screen okay?
It's fine.
Okay, great. So you will find when we have to go into executive session, we have to go into executive session for a reason, and it has to be a reason that complies with the law. These are the reasons that comply with the law. So there's two different ways these reasons are broken up. The first section up here, where I'm moving my cursor, has to do with making a finding that premature public knowledge would place the board at a substantial disadvantage. So you can see the topics there are contracts, labor relations, arbitration, mediation, grievances, any litigation, or any attorney-based communication. So you can understand why we have to decide that the conversation would put the board at a disadvantage, and then we would go into executive session. The other types of reasons to go into executive session are the ones where you do not have to make a finding of substantial disadvantage. And those reasons you can see listed there: securing real estate, appointing or employing or evaluating a public officer or employee. Notice that's a pretty broad swath that gets caught there, right? Like that means hiring, evaluating anybody that works for the district, essentially, is a reason why we could go into those conversations. Discipline or dismissal action against a public officer or employee, which means basically any employee who works for the school district. Clear and imminent peril to public safety. There's a long list of records that are exempt from the Public Records Act. They're listed in that statute 1 VSA 317C. And then any discussion we might have about academic records or discipline of students, and any conversation about school safety or emergency measures if that disclosure would jeopardize public safety. As an example, let's say we were going to talk about strategy about a school safety situation. You know, there are some things that you don't want to put on the internet, that you don't want to put on the airwaves when it comes to talking about how you're handling certain things. So these come up, not every time we meet, but they do come up, and sometimes they come up at the last minute. A situation will come into account. I will communicate with Adrian and say, hey, need to schedule an executive session for the next board meeting. Is that okay? And then that usually occurs. Sometimes the night of, there may be a reason, and I'll just bring it up at the start of the meeting that there's something that came up. Usually we schedule these at the back end of the meeting just to try to be respectful of our audience so that they're not waiting on us while we're in a private conversation. But sometimes they need to happen at the beginning or in the midst of a meeting. So I hope that makes sense, just kind of in terms of overall process. And I will stop sharing my screen. Thanks for that, Adrian.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the things that people can do to make sure that they're alone is wear your headphones when you're in an executive session, because it means you and your, it is specific to you, not your family. And I know that sounds a little harsh, but an executive session is truly just for the board members and whoever's invited into the meeting for whatever purpose it is. So make good use of your headphones. And try and respect the executive session goal of keeping things confidential. Other than that, unless somebody has an objection, I will take a motion to adjourn for everybody's first board meeting.
I see George with that motion, Adrian.
Okay, thank you, George. A second?
Liz.
Okay, Liz, I doubt there's a discussion, but is there a discussion about adjourning? Okay. Otherwise, hold up your hand or just sign off.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you very
Good night.
much.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night and thank you.
Welcome to